Hello, welcome to another episode of Homily Chat. I'm Father Darryl Millette here in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, a place which is nice and sunny right now, although earlier this week I had to start the furnace here. It got to about 3 degrees overnight Celsius. I think it's like 36 or something Fahrenheit. Anyway,
Yeah, I
it
think
was a
so,
little,
about 36,
little
37.
chilly when I woke up in the morning, so yeah, so we're in that time of year now. You don't know whether to run the air conditioner during the day, the furnace at night, or just leave it. Who knows? But with me, as usual, Father Michael Liliedahl, just south of San Francisco.
That's right. And I'm actually a few miles further south than I usually am. I am in the office at the school that I'm a chaplain at because, as you may notice, if you're watching this live, we usually do this on a Thursday evening or a Friday evening. Today, we're doing it on a Friday morning here on the West Coast or Friday midday out on the East Coast. And so I have some things to do beforehand. I have some things to do afterwards at the school. And so here I am. You can see my office, I guess.
All right, that's pretty awesome. And we do have a few people actually watching at this time of day. Jane's commenting, wow, this is early. Yep, it
Yep.
sure is. But yeah, basically, this has been a pretty busy week for both of us. And tonight I have a special wedding rehearsal with my brother. I'm doing his wedding tomorrow. So, presiding at his wedding tomorrow. So, this was about the only time we could possibly do this week. Last night didn't work, and here we are. But glad to be here.
Yeah, it's very good to be here. And when you're talking about that, the temperature up in Saskatchewan, it reminded me of one of my favorite stand-up comedians has this routine where he says, everyone talks about the glorious fall weather. He goes, "Are you kidding? The fall weather is terrible." He goes, "It's high, it's low, it's high, it's low. You don't know what to do." He goes, "That's not weather, that's malaria."
Oh dear. Good. Well,
But
here
yeah,
we are.
welcome to Homily Chat. I know last week we were talking about what we were going to preach on, and I said, "Oh, you know what? I get to hear the Archbishop preach this week because
Right.
I'll be going." And hate to disappoint you, I did not hear the Archbishop preach because what happened is Saturday morning I got a call from the Chancery, and they said, "Oh, we have enough priests. We have actually one priest too many, and since you were coming from the furthest away, we thought maybe you would not have to come." And I didn't want to say, "Well, I need content for the podcast. I need content." I didn't want to say that, so I just said, "Thank you very much. I'm glad to have offered." And so I did not get a chance to go. But last week was one of those interesting times when I had already preached 2 homilies, and then I saw something on Twitter, and I thought, you know what? I want to change, not change, but I want to add one more thing to what I'm going to be preaching about.
But just one
And I
homily.
think just one thing. It was still just one homily. It was still just one homily. But instead of 2 points, I had 3 points. So it was very Trinitarian in a sense. And but I remember what I preached about was that we all have crosses. And if we preach Christ without cross, if we preach Christ without suffering, then we preach an incomplete Christ. We're preaching a false Christ. And I said that's where the mystery of suffering really comes in. But then I had seen something on Twitter that really kind of caught my attention. And it had mentioned essentially that suffering is not just suffering for suffering's sake. How we suffer kind of matters. The cross is not holy and good because it's suffering. The cross is good and holy because it is at its core a gift of self. It's a self gift. And that's the kind of the point I added in is that suffering that we have has to be made into a self gift. And so the example I brought up was actually Chadwick Boseman, right? The actor who played Black Panther. And some of the posts I had seen where even though he was suffering from this cancer that I imagine was incredibly painful and no one really knew about it, he still went to children's wards and hospitals of children suffering from cancer and kind of made their day. And so I said, that seems like an example of taking your own suffering and making it a gift of yourself. In a sense, not just trying to ignore the suffering or not run from it, but in a sense, diving into it and making it a gift of self. Because we all know that we can just suffer and kind of sit there and self-wallow for a long time, but that's not what's going to redeem the suffering. What's going to redeem the suffering is, like Christ, making it a self-gift.
Mm-hmm. That's actually quite profound too. Um, I didn't follow that story quite so closely up here,
Hmm.
but yeah, I did hear that he had passed away. So prayers for him too. I mean, for me, what I ended up doing this past weekend was a little bit different, although kind of similar theme. Basically, that Jesus at the beginning of this gospel is revealing really what his mission is. That he's gonna suffer, he's gonna die, and raise again, and really we only see what that kind of means after the fact, but he's revealing what his whole mission is. And St. Peter, in his lack of understanding, is basically trying to block Jesus from fulfilling his mission of rescuing humanity. Kind of like, if someone's driving and doesn't get out of the way of the ambulance, kind of like that in a way. But then, as Jesus goes on and talks about exhorting us to take up our cross and follow him, it's the amazing reality that he actually invites and calls upon everyone who's baptized to share in his mission. That we're not just passive actors, but we actually are called upon to share in his mission of reaching out with love to humanity. So that's kind of the direction I went on that one. It's, Jesus has his mission, but we are actually called to share in that mission. So that's the direction I ended up going. Using the ambulance as a bit of an example. I had a few things swimming around in my head, but that's what I came up with.
Sure.
I was like,
Actually, that sounds like
of San Francisco was going to say, but
Yeah. No, your point sounds exactly right, because it's something I've always kind of thought was, I don't want to say missing from this quote that I've heard from Fulton Sheen, where Fulton Sheen once said, everyone on earth has been given a mission of how they live. Christ is the one person whose mission on earth was to come to die. And in a sense, I always thought that he was missing that point that you brought up, that yes, but by his mission to die, he's given us a share in that exact same mission. Mm-hmm. And so our mission, in a sense, is to live, to die, in order to live. Right. And so it kind of becomes all of that kind of combined. So no, I like where you were going. Exactly. It was a great point.
Well, thanks. So anyway, that's where we were on the weekend. Yeah. So you said mass just at the parish then?
Just at the parish. At the parish. Yeah. Kind of my normal Sunday schedule, but we will see if I have my cell phone on me today. If I get a call from the chancery saying they need someone, although I'm thinking we may not, because things have changed a little bit in San Francisco. Okay. So last week it was outdoor mass was only allowed to have 12 people. And so what they were doing on the plaza of the cathedral is they had 12 altars set up. So they had room for 144 people to be present, with at basically 12 simultaneous masses. But the regulations have changed, and now they're allowing 50 people at an outdoor mass. So in order to get 150 people, they only need 3 priests to do that, the same little setup. So it's one of those things where, as always, read the fine print and see what we can do this week. So
yeah. Well, I mean, hey, that's looking up. Hopefully the numbers of cases in your area are dropping too.
They're dropping very, very slowly, but
okay.
It's yeah.
I mean, it's always like a 2-week lag with this thing, because with the incubation time, whatever. Mm-hmm. But anyway, okay.
Well, let's get on to the this week's gospel. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because we skipped a few chapters in Matthew to going ahead to this one. So I don't know if you're going to talk about anything that we skipped. I'm not really, but I thought it was interesting, some of the things they skipped. But we end up basically in the middle of chapter 18. And so a reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Glory to you, O Lord. Jesus said to his disciples, "If your brother sins against you, go and tell him his fault between you and him alone. If he listens to you, you have won over your brother. If he does not listen, take 1 or 2 others along with you, so that every fact may be established on the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. If he refuses to listen to them, tell the church. If he refuses to listen even to the church, then treat him as you would a Gentile or a tax collector. Amen, I say to you, whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. Again, amen, I say to you, if two of you agree on earth about anything for which they are to pray, it shall be granted to them by my heavenly Father. For where two or three are gathered together in my name, there I am in the midst of them. The gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus
Lord
Christ.
Jesus Christ.
So basically, because my brother's wedding is tomorrow and my brain's been a little scattered, this is going to be more what Father Jim Chern would call homily on the spot.
Okay.
I haven't had a chance to really, unfortunately, take a good look at this. And the homily on Sunday might be really short.
And profound.
Depends what time I get to bed on Saturday after the wedding. So, hey, if you want a short mass, this might be the place to go. But basically, the first thing that comes to my mind, maybe this is just where the world is at right now, but the first thing that comes to mind when I see the first paragraph in this gospel about basically a process for resolving disputes in many ways is Twitter, Facebook, social media, cancel culture, the whole thing, right? Because Jesus gives us, I think, a very level-headed, very sane way of dealing with disputes, with helping someone to, maybe find that they've taken a wrong path and to return back and whatnot. I don't think we see a lot of it out there, though. And by saying that, maybe I'm kind of getting in the middle of it too. But yeah, I mean, the way Jesus is basically dealing with this is, okay, point out the fault, like between the two of you first, but it seems that the first impulse seems to be put it on Twitter first. It's kind of a backwards way of going about it. Or, even if you're not in social media, there might be the temptation to gossip about it. This person did this and this, or this person failed to do this and this, or whatever it happens to be. But Jesus is giving us a very level-headed, sane approach to resolving different things. Go between the two of you first. Don't go airing your dirty laundry in public first. And if that doesn't work, then maybe bring a couple more people in. And if that doesn't work, go to the church. And then if that doesn't work, okay, then you can put someone out. But more, I think even with that, it's more of a medicinal thing. Like, in my new office as chancellor, I've been having to read a lot of canon law because, hey, that's just my life now. But even in the canon law, it's interesting. The penalties that are given in canon law for certain offenses, whatever they may be, they are medicinal in nature. They're always designed to try to get the person to realize the error of their ways and return back to the fullness of communion, the fullness of grace, whatever it happens to be. And, even like if there's a case where the law would proclaim they call lete sententiae, sort of a punishment. Basically you commit that offense, and by the commission of that offense, you get this penalty. That only really applies, in my understanding, if the person's aware that penalty exists when they do the action. Because otherwise, what's the point? The penalty is not going to be medicinal if they don't know it exists. So, in everything that I see Jesus saying here, it's to help people to return to the fullness of communion, the fullness of grace. Basically, he's preaching about reconciliation in many ways. I don't know if that's exactly the direction I'm going to go, but when I'm reading this, the first glance, that's what's coming to my mind anyways. So how about you, Father Michael?
No, well, first I wanted to say I like your idea about the medicinal thing, because I think kind of in that same line, what it's talking about is, okay, you're going to have grievances with someone. Someone is going to sin against you. And then it always comes down to, well, you have a choice of what you do with that. You can kind of just get angry and use it and kind of feed your anger, feed your pride, feed these things. And that's what we do when we just kind of rant about it on Facebook or Twitter or start gossiping about it. But the question is, do you actually want to be reconciled with the person who has sinned against you? And the answer for Jesus Christ is always, always. Right. That's why, I find it interesting. You compare and contrast, right? what's one of our kind of first natural instincts that we do when we get wronged? Well, let me share someone, how I got wrong. Let me put it on Facebook. Let me put it out there for the world to see. When Christ is wrong, when he is sinned against, and someone comes back to him to repent in the confessional, what is the one thing we're not allowed to do as the people who, as priests who hear that, is to tell anyone, right? His goal is to be reconciled. His goal is not to broadcast the sin and to kind of have these mic drop moments. His goal is reconciliation. And so I think that's even kind of something you're looking at is, what is the goal of your relationship with the person who sinned against you? Is it to use this person to further your anger, or is it honestly to be reconciled with them? But I was actually looking at the last two lines of the gospel, right? Where two or three are gathered in my name, there I am in the midst of them. And oftentimes when I'm asked to lead prayer, I'll start with this quote. I'll say, Christ, we know that you said that where two or three are gathered in your name, you are there in the midst of them. And so confident of your presence here among us as we turn to you in prayer is oftentimes kind of the format that I start a prayer with. But I was fascinated that it's attached with this gospel, because I had always kind of just taken that quote out of context. But here it's really talking about reconciliation and the kind of the authority of the church, the authority of the apostles to forgive sins. And as we have to say it, you've been reading the canon law, right? As priests, we have the ability to not forgive sins if conditions are met. But I don't know, no priest is looking for that. When people come in like, oh, I want to see, I'm looking for a reason to not forgive them, to withhold the mercy. No. It has to be just blatant and manifest to not give the mercy. And, we're looking to be merciful. And so one of the things that I was thinking about even is, although it doesn't it doesn't fit quite perfectly, that where two or three are gathered in their name, especially in the spirit of reconciliation, there is Christ in the midst of them. And I almost say Christ is so present, right, that it becomes a sacrament in that reconciliation room. Although it doesn't quite fit, because where three are gathered together in your name. And very, very rarely, the only circumstance I can think of is if, a mother brings in a baby with her or something. But usually, confession is just the priest and the penitent. But there is something incredibly holy there. And it is kind of always geared towards that motive, like I was saying before, of reconciliation. So I'm trying to kind of work with that to see why exactly is this phrase, where two or three are gathered in my name, there I am in the midst of them. Is that really linked here with this process of reconciliation, and then the authority of the church and the authority of the apostles to bind on earth, or bind in heaven, which they bind on earth? Do you have any thoughts or anything coming to mind?
I didn't really think of it in that way, but it's a really good point. I mean, where my mind went when I first saw that line was, well, in some cases we only have like two or three coming because, or whatever, a very small number coming because, that's just the style of the time, 60 people in a church that seats 750 or whatever it happens to be, because that's just the style of the time right now. But still, a comforting thought to realize that, yeah, Jesus is in the midst of us, even in that small number. But to tie it directly, I should have probably thought of tying it directly to the gospel in which it exists, because that's should be how you interpret these things in context, right?
Yeah, generally. Well, that's one of the things that surprised me, because I had forgotten that this was the context that it came in. I had just remember kind of really just pulled it out of context, and so trying to put it back into context is confusing isn't the word, but intriguing and thought provoking. So
yeah, no, I like that a lot. Like I said, I don't know exactly what I'm gonna go with this Sunday. It probably won't be long.
Yep.
But it all depends how awake I am, right?
Exactly.
Not that I plan on staying up late, but it is my brother's wedding, so.
Well, and I'm thinking, because one of the things I was thinking about as well is sometimes in reading the church fathers, they have commentaries that really pick up on one or two words, and they have some interesting things that don't just go with the general theme of the gospel. And so one of the things I was thinking about with this one is, where two or three are gathered in my name, again, kind of going back to Fulton Sheen, he has that book, right? It takes 3 to get married. You have the couple, and then you also have that Christ, that God has to be part of this marriage. So it takes 3 to get married. It takes man, woman, God. And so I almost want to say it's you could do something, and I'm not. You probably have your homily all written out, and you have great stories to tell about your brother and whatnot. But where 2 or 3 are gathered in your name, the 2 are gathered here. It will become 3, and Christ is truly present in the midst of this wedding, and it's connected to the reconciliation because what other relationship on earth is going to be in need of reconciliation eventually than within a marriage, right? Because you can't walk out on that one.
Well, they pick different readings, so it's on Saturday, right? It's Saturday afternoon, so totally different readings. But yeah, that would be hilarious though. Just show up and say, "So, as you'll hear in the gospel tomorrow when you come to church," and then just stare at them.
Yeah. Well, I've had to do something like that before when the lector had read the wrong reading at the Saturday Vigil Mass. They had read they hadn't flipped the page, and so they just read the Saturday Mass of the day, and then it was the Saturday Vigil. And normally I would just I wouldn't say anything. I would just let it go, except I was preaching on that first reading. And so I think I got up there and said, I forget if I said I didn't think I said as you should have heard, because that would just point out the mistake. But I think I said, the first reading from this Sunday says, and so even if they didn't hear it yet, I kind of repeated it again without pointing out, and this lector over here is the one who screwed it up, and they should have read this, but I didn't want to do that. So
yeah. Well, the sacristan forgot to set up the right book. For us, the weekdays are in a totally different book, so.
Okay.
And it's a different colored book too, so if you mess that up, that's on whoever set up, which right now is me.
Yeah.
So I have no one to blame but myself.
I'm always in favor of blaming yourself for something in the
yeah. I mean, actually here the priest, at least in my parish, the priest is actually doing all the readings still, because the government of Saskatchewan is still recommending that we don't share microphones. So I think for my brother's wedding, yeah, they do have readers. I'm not reading all the readings, but it's all family. So
yeah. No, we have, we're the priest is doing all the readings where we are as well, just because we have one microphone for outside.
Yeah.
Although we did have a funeral for a priest maybe a month ago, 3 weeks ago. And so we had kind of not the MC, but somebody who works at the parish. His tasks during the Mass were to go over to the microphone with a wipe and just wipe it off in between the readers so they could have the different readers.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I could do that too, I guess. We just find it. Basically, when I'm saying Mass, the presider's chair is getting very little use. I'm standing the whole Mass, basically. Up there, read, psalm, read,
Yep. I'll say this: the only time the presider's chair gets used at the masses that I'm celebrating is immediately before the Mass, because we don't have a processional, and so I just I get vested, and about 5 minutes beforehand, I'm just kind of sitting there in the chair praying, and that's the only time the chair gets used.
Good.
But I have another question for you here. So, yes. The translation that we use here in the United States says, "Treat him as you would a Gentile or a tax collector." Does your translation say something different? Does it say the same? And what are your thoughts on that?
It's a different conjunction.
Okay.
Let such a one be to you as a Gentile and a tax collector. So it's like a double whammy, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we'd have to think, how would a Gentile or how would a tax collector be treated? And it's fascinating. This is in the Gospel of Matthew. You think of someone who was a tax collector.
Yeah.
I have to imagine he's writing with his own experience in mind, that he knows how he would have been shunned, how he would have been looked down upon, how people in his profession would have been looked down upon, not trusted, whatnot. So he probably has that in mind as he's writing down the words of Jesus here. Yeah, they're not seen as really fully part of the community, and yet they kind of are. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I was reading something, and they were talking about the more on the issue of the Gentile rather than the tax collector.
Mm-hmm.
And they were a lot of the commentary I was reading was actually talking about the issue you brought up earlier, kind of excommunications and people being, if they just don't listen to the church on the issue of reconciliation, then this is saying treat them as you would a Gentile or a tax collector, shun them from the community. Is in essence what some of the church fathers were saying, that they have kind of incurred this excommunication. But they always make that point that you did, right? That it's intended to be medicinal.
Mm-hmm.
And there is this case going on that's received some publicity in Northern California. It's in Sacramento, so it's maybe an hour and a half drive from here. But I'm still kind of debating. I don't know if it's received enough attention in the news here in San Francisco that people would know what I was talking about if I brought it up in a homily. But essentially, I think maybe 3 weeks ago, the bishop wrote a letter to the faithful of the diocese telling them that a priest had incurred a lete sententiae excommunication for some of his actions, essentially for denying the papacy of Francis and not including his name in the Eucharistic prayer and a bunch of things. And this priest also wrote and he said, yeah, I deserve this. And so he's aware of it. And that has kind of been on my mind here with this, because it's been for in this situation, it's been a long process. It's been going on there's been some kind of issues going on for 3 or 4 years, but I'm wondering, you don't want to get to this final level, but sometimes you have to, and what's also interesting is parts of the gospel that we skipped over. I think a couple verses before, or maybe the chapter before, where Jesus says, if your eye causes you to sin, pluck it out. If your hand causes you to sin, cut it off. And I'm wondering, is there a connection to that with this, that if you have tried to reconcile with someone, if you have honestly kind of gone through these steps of approaching them one-on-one, bringing just a couple other people, bringing in kind of the authority of the church, and somebody is just resolutely against reconciliation, is it the best thing to just kind of at the end kind of have to make that pronouncement to cast them off? And what happens if, even though it's intended to be medicinal, it doesn't start healing at all?
No.
So it's a tough situation. So.
Yeah. I mean, we do this all the time in the civic realm, right? If someone's a danger to society or a danger to someone, we will arrest them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like this happens all the time. And I don't think anyone sees anything wrong with arresting someone who's being a danger to other people. Like it's, so this might be kind of a sort of an extension to that. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. And I think part of it, again, is when you mentioned that, I know some of the prison reform advocates in the United States are saying, well, we need to change even the nature of prisons, that the goal is to reintroduce prisoners back into society. Essentially, the goal is reconciliation of the person who has wronged society with society itself, so that they're not perpetually on the outside. Because I think that's, again, part of that, as you said, that mission of Christ is that he will identify those on the outside for the purpose of bringing them into himself. He doesn't want people to just perpetually be outside of him. Yeah. But in the end, he doesn't force, he invites.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, he died for prisoners too, right? So yeah, I know that's often been one of the stated goals in Canada for the prison system. I guess we're getting a little bit off the topic there, but whether it's always carried through or not, no system is perfect, not by any means. But I think Jesus does uphold a pretty important ideal here for us, something to continue to strive toward. I know, do I live this out perfectly? No. Do any of us? Probably not. But he does uphold an important principle here. Very important principle here.
No, I think so. I like that. Just the principle that the goal has to be reconciliation.
Yeah.
And so I think I may preach on that. I may even get into I don't know, but I'm sure there's got to be something great about the actual etymology of the word reconcile. To of course, re to do something again. I'd have to look at what concile. I'm thinking it might have something to do with counsel, to come once again together in kind of a council thing. So
Yeah. I mean, Jane makes a good point here too. You can't reconcile with someone who doesn't want to reconcile. Our job is usually to forgive them and not regress into bitterness about the situation. And yeah, I mean, I agree. Sometimes reconciliation does take two levels. I mean, we can forgive. We're called to do so.
Yeah.
And that's not an on-off switch either, by the way. That's often a process, a journey. But
absolutely.
Yeah.
And actually, when you were talking about that it takes two to reconcile. I think that might be where Christ is getting at the end of this gospel, that where those two who are reconciling are coming together, Christ is there in their midst. That is a grace-filled moment when both sides, and that's where, because people who have wronged could be 2 or 3 or 4, where those separated members are coming back together in reconciliation is that grace-filled moment that Christ is present in.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I just made that connection. I don't know if I'll preach on it, but I think that answers for me the questions I had kind of going into the gospel.
Mm-hmm. No, that's good. And I'm sorry, I realized the stream's probably been dropping off a little bit lately here too. I just noticed my Mac decided to start running a backup, which happens over the network, which is just fantastic because it makes everything work beautifully. I got to figure out a way to shut that off when we're actually streaming. But technology! It was funny. Like the reason we started a little late today is because of I don't know. We started up Zoom and suddenly I had no picture.
Yeah, I was hearing Darryl, our father Darryl, but I wasn't seeing a picture of him. And I said, "Oh, we have your voice, but we don't have your picture yet."
We should have gone with that. It might have been more popular, but Oh, hey, we're here now, and I think this has been it's given me a lot of food for thought, so this is very good. So thank you for this discussion. And thanks everyone for joining. I know there's been a few people actually joining us at this kind of strange hour to be podcasting, but thanks for joining us. I have a dog licking my elbow right now. She's just off camera. Oh, there you go. You can see her a bit.
She's getting excited for the wedding too, so.
I guess so. Well, she's not going to be going to the church, mind you, but yeah. Well, hi. Yeah. Okay. People listening on the audio version are probably wondering, what is he talking about? I have a dog right off camera who's looking at me. Probably wants to go outside.
Yeah. Probably. Yeah. But to everyone who doesn't need to go outside to bring a dog, we want to say, thank you for joining us. Whether you're joining us live on YouTube or on our website or on Facebook or listening later via podcast or watching later, thank you very much. Let us know what you're thinking. Let us know your thoughts on this gospel, on anything else. Get a hold of us. Just basically look up Homily Chat any place that you can find us, which would be Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, or it's pretty simple, homilychat.com.
Yes, thank you all for joining us. And until next time, keep your stick on the ice. Hockey's still on.
There we go. Have a good time, folks. We'll see you later.
Bye.